HOA scam exposed. She stole thousands from the whole neighborhood. I paid $70 for having my garden gnome 2 inches too close to the sidewalk. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when my neighbor Linda, sweet 72-year-old Linda, was fined $500 because her grandson's bike tire touched the HOA-approved mulch. Oh, and guess who pocketed that money? The youngest, most ambitious HOA president our community had ever seen, Miss Perfect HOA Queen herself, HOA Karen. And trust me, she wasn't collecting those fees to keep the grass green. Now, before you grab your pitchforks, which by the way the HOA also banned, let me explain. I live in Maple Creek Villas, a peaceful retirement community. Or at least it used to be peaceful. Picture it: manicured lawns, American flags swaying gently in the breeze, neighbors who actually talk to each other. You know, back when communities felt like, well, communities, that was before she showed up. HOA Karen, 28 years old, realtor license shining like her fake designer handbag. She didn't just move in, she took over. At first, she was charming. I just want to help modernize the HOA, she'd chirp at every monthly meeting. She volunteered to be on the rules committee, then the landscaping committee, then the social committee. Before long, people were calling her the Maple Creek mayor. And like every small town mayor with too much power and not enough oversight, she started making rules. Oh, the rules. No holiday decorations before November 25th. Veterans Day flags. Nope against the aesthetic uniformity clause. No lawn chairs on front porches. Clutter. And God forbid your grandkids ride their scooters on the sidewalk. That was a $50 fine per wheel. But the worst rule, a maintenance fee adjustment, voted in during a meeting. Only 8 people attended, 6 of whom were her hand-picked committee advisors. The adjustment, a new monthly fee of $75 for beautification projects. Nobody ever saw these so-called projects, unless you count the $6,000 executive HOA retreat at a fancy spa 2 towns over. Then came the fines. They started small. A few dollars here for leaving a trash can out too long, $20 for a flower pot that didn't comply with community standards. But soon residents like Linda were getting slapped with $500 citations for ridiculous violations. One poor guy was fined $1,200 for having a patriotic mailbox wrap. HOA claimed it violated the uniform mailbox policy. She wrote that policy, by the way. When people asked where the money was going, she waved them off. Budgeting is a complex process. Trust the leadership team. Of course, the leadership team was her cousin and her ex-boyfriend, who somehow became the HOA treasurer after a membership vote. Nobody remembered happening. I started digging. Turns out HOA had amended the HOA bylaws, giving herself unilateral authority to impose new fines and adjust monthly dues. And thanks to a clause she'd slipped into the last meeting minutes again, approved by a vote, with only her inner circle present, she could legally redirect up to 20% of collected fees to administrative costs. Administrative costs like, say, leasing a brand new BMW and flying to Vegas twice a year. Now, most people would have given up, sold their homes, and fled Maple Creek, but I'm not most people. Before I retired, I was a real estate attorney for 35 years. I wrote CC&Rs like the ones HOA was abusing, and I still had friends in the county records office. Let's just say I found a little something in the original property deeds that HOA and her treasurer forgot to check. And once I uncovered it, the real fun began to be continued. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. See, HOA's game wasn't just about power, it was about money. Serious money. At first, most of the neighbors thought the fines and fees were just annoying. A few grumbled. Most paid. We're a neighborhood of retirees, veterans, and young families. Folks here don't like rocking the boat. They just want to tend their gardens, watch their grandkids, and enjoy the peace they worked all their lives for. That's what HOA counted on. Compliance through exhaustion. But when I pulled the HOA's recent financial disclosures, what little HOA had actually released, I noticed something. The beautification budget kept growing, but the grass stayed patchy. The playground upgrade, HOA promised, never happened. The clubhouse renovation delayed for 4 years, yet monthly dues had tripled. I approached Linda one morning while she was watering her roses. "Linda," I said carefully, "have you noticed anything strange about the HOA's spending?" She sighed. "I try not to think about it anymore. Last time I complained about the fines, HOA's cousin parked a tow truck outside my house all night. That stopped me cold." "A tow truck?" Linda nodded. Said it was a compliance vehicle checking for driveway violations. A compliance vehicle. No HOA handbook I'd ever seen included anything called a compliance vehicle. I thanked Linda and took my concerns to a few other neighbors. I trusted Bill from Lot 7, a retired accountant, and Mary from Lot 12, a former city clerk. Both had similar stories, late-night inspections, strange new finds, and one terrifying incident where a single mother was threatened with eviction because her dog's barking violated a revised noise ordinance. The dog was a 12-year-old beagle, half-deaf. Didn't bark unless the Amazon driver knocked twice. HOA's fines against her totaled the $4,600. It was Bill who first mentioned the secret vote. According to HOA's latest newsletter, a glossy, full-color thing she mailed out monthly, there had been a vote approving a new administrative flexibility clause. Basically, it let the HOA board read HOA and her friends move funds between categories without resident approval. I asked around. Nobody remembered any vote, no minutes, no ballots, no meeting. When I requested copies of the meeting minutes under our HOA's transparency policy, HOA's treasurer replied, "Due to confidentiality concerns, those records are not available for public review." Illegal. Flat out illegal. I gathered Bill, Mary, Linda, and two other concerned neighbors. We started tracking every fine, fee, and fund transfer notice we could collect. We dug through newsletters, HOA bulletins. Even Trash Mary was particularly proud of retrieving shredded budget drafts from a recycling bin outside the clubhouse. Over 3 weeks, we built a spreadsheet, over $97,000 unaccounted for, money that had disappeared into what HOA called discretionary beautification. Bill's exact words, "That's not beautification, that's embezzlement." When HOA found out about our little task force, she didn't send a polite cease and desist. She sent lawyers. 3 residents, Bill, Mary, and the single mom with the beagle, received letters from an expensive downtown firm threatening defamation lawsuits if they continued spreading false information. Linda and I, we got visits from the compliance vehicle. At 2 a.m., bright spotlights flashing into our bedrooms, recording every move. This wasn't just intimidation. This was a message. Stop or else. One sunny Thursday, I got home to find an envelope taped to my door. Notice of lien and foreclosure proceedings. HOA had slapped a lien on my property citing non-compliance fines totaling $12,500, $12,500. My so-called violations, unapproved modifications to landscaping. My bird bath was apparently too ornate. Failure to comply with vehicle storage policy. My son's pickup was parked 3 inches over the property line. Unauthorized neighborhood organizing. That last one, that was because of the task force HOA was trying to take my house when I first bought my property. 22 years ago, I'd negotiated a unique easement deal with the original developer. That deal, still legally binding, gave me partial ownership rights over the community's water access easement, which meant HOA couldn't sell, transfer, or modify water service infrastructure without my co-signature. If she tried, it was a criminal offense. And guess what? That beautification budget included a $35,000 line item for water infrastructure upgrades. Without my signature, at the next HOA meeting, HOA marched in wearing her usual power outfit, navy pantsuit, red heels, and a clipboard like a shield. She barely looked at the room before announcing, "Due to persistent non-compliance by certain residents, foreclosure actions will proceed. No further discussion." Bill tried to speak. "Out of order." Mary raised her hand. "Out of order." I stood up. "Actually, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say." HOA rolled her eyes. "You have already received notice of lien proceedings. You have no standing." I smiled. "I have exactly the standing required. You have violated easement agreements, financial disclosure laws, and HOA transparency statutes, and I have the documentation to prove it." I dropped 3 heavy binders onto the table. HOA's face went pale. Then she did something that told me everything I needed to know. She ran, grabbed her clipboard, bolted out the side door, leaving her cousin and treasurer gaping behind her. If you think this was wild, wait till you hear what HOA did next, because she wasn't done. Not even close. You'd think when an HOA president gets caught embezzling nearly $100,000, they'd back down, resign, lawyer up, maybe even flee town. But HOA wasn't most people, and she certainly wasn't done. After the HOA meeting where I dropped the binders, the evidence, the easement violations, the secret financial transfers, HOA vanished. For 3 days, there were no newsletters, no angry emails, no late-night compliance vehicle patrols. Bill, Mary, Linda, and I thought we'd finally won. Maybe she's consulting a lawyer. Mary said hopefully. Maybe she realized she's cooked, Bill added. For 72 glorious hours, the neighborhood felt normal again. People mowed their lawns without fear of citations. Kids rode bikes without stopwatches, timing their play hours. Then on the fourth morning, Bill knocked on my door. His face was pale. You need to see this. Every house associated with our investigation had received a notice, not an email, not a polite letter. A formal notice of enforcement action stamped with the HOA's official seal signed by HOA herself. Violations cited included unauthorized gathering of residents without HOA oversight, distribution of defamatory material, evidence binders non-compliance with new communication standards, banning neighborhood listservs and flyers. HOA had also imposed a new disciplinary fee structure. First offense, $500, second offense, $1,000, third offense, foreclosure proceedings. And here's the kicker. Residents found engaging in sustained disruptive conduct may be subject to expedited lien enforcement and property seizure. Property seizure, she was trying to take our homes. At first, some neighbors rallied behind us. People who had quietly resented HOA's reign of fines and intimidation, but others, the younger families, the HOA loyalists, began to whisper, maybe you went too far. Maybe you embarrassed her. She has authority. You should have worked through proper channels. HOA's narrative was working. She spun our investigation as a neighborhood coup attempt. She told residents we were trying to dissolve the HOA entirely and force everyone into unregulated chaos where property values would plummet. Bill's mailbox was smashed 2 nights later. Mary's rose bushes were uprooted. Linda's tires were slashed. No one saw who did it, but we all knew. Just when I thought we were completely isolated, quiet allies emerged. Mrs. Garcia, a 79-year-old widow from Lot 18, slipped me an envelope one evening. Inside were scanned copies of HOA invoices showing payments to a consulting firm that didn't exist. First Thompson, a retired police officer from Lot 5, offered to install security cameras at the homes of our group members. HOA was playing dirty, he said, but dirt leaves footprints. For every resident who turned against us, another stepped up with quiet support. But time was running out. HOA had announced a special compliance meeting scheduled for the following week. She planned to recommend foreclosure actions against 5 properties, mine, Bill's, Mary's, Linda's, and the single mom with the beagle, Sarah. Before the meeting, I took one last gamble. I filed an emergency injunction at the county court citing unlawful HOA actions and potential civil rights violations. To my surprise, the judge granted a temporary restraining order, halting all foreclosure actions. But when the injunction was served to HOA at her office downtown, something remarkable happened. The process server called me laughing. She tried to claim she wasn't Huatran, said she didn't know what an HOA was. She denied being herself. That told me everything. She was scared. But scared people don't surrender. They double down. The night of the special compliance meeting, the community center was packed. Easily 150 residents. More than any meeting before HOA entered, flanked by her cousin, the treasurer, and a young man wearing a suit who she introduced as HOA legal counsel. I recognized him. He wasn't a lawyer. He was her boyfriend, a paralegal at a small firm downtown. We are here, HOA announced coolly, to restore order and preserve the values of Maple Creek Villas. She listed the so-called violations. She accused our group of inciting discord, compromising community safety, engaging in sovereign citizen-style obstructionism. I actually laughed out loud at that one. Then she called for a vote of no confidence, not against herself, against us. A motion to revoke the community privileges of the following residents, pending foreclosure. Hands shot up. Some willingly. Others hesitated, looking around nervously. Mary squeezed my arm. They're going to do it. That's when the side doors burst open. Deputies from the sheriff's department, and behind them reporters from the local news. This meeting is suspended pending investigation, one deputy announced. The reporters started filming. Cameras panned across the room. An audit of Maple Creek Villas HOA financials has uncovered potential criminal misappropriation of funds exceeding $100,000. Gasps. Additionally, allegations of harassment, fraudulent liens, and impersonation of legal counsel are under review. HOA tried to speak. This is an outrage. These people are sabotaging. Then the deputy cut her off. Miss Tran, you are not permitted to convene HOA actions during an active criminal investigation. Bill leaned over and whispered, checkmate. HOA didn't go quietly. The next morning, HOA loyalists circulated flyers claiming we had faked the investigation, that the audit was politically motivated. Some residents demanded a revote. Others called for immediate dissolution of the HOA. And HOA herself. She filed a counter lawsuit accusing me of defamation, emotional distress, and interference with contractual obligations. That lawsuit wouldn't last long because the district attorney's office had just opened a grand jury inquiry. If you think this was wild, wait till you hear what HOA did when the police froze her assets. You won't believe who she threw under the bus to save herself. You'd think having the sheriff's department crash your HOA meeting would make someone stop. Not HOA. Oh no. She wasn't just going to fight, she was going to burn the whole neighborhood down with her if she had to. The morning after the meeting, while the local news was still replaying footage of the deputies shutting her down, HOA filed an emergency lawsuit against me. Bill, Mary, Linda, Sarah, the single mom, and 2 other residents. Her accusation, a coordinated conspiracy to defame, destabilize, and illegally seize control of the Maple Creek Villas, HOA. It was absurd. But absurd, lawsuits are powerful weapons. Suddenly, every one of us named had to hire attorneys. HOA's plan was brilliant in a twisted way. If she could bury us in court fees, even if the lawsuit had no merit, she could financially cripple us and stop the grand jury investigation cold. If we can't afford to keep fighting, she wins by default, Bill muttered grimly. But then came the twist she didn't see coming. Remember Mrs. Garcia, the quiet widow who slipped me those fake invoice copies? Turns out she'd been keeping records of every HOA transaction since HOA became president. Why, my late husband always said, never trust anyone under 30 with other people's money. I figured it couldn't hurt. Bless her heart, she showed up at my door with a box inside. HOA checks with HOA's signature, receipts from luxury stores, airline tickets to Vegas and New York, invoices to the consulting firm she created under her cousin's name. Best of all, bank statements from when HOA accidentally charged an HOA fee to her personal account. A $9,000 deposit labeled Community Beautification Fund, followed by a withdrawal at a luxury car dealership. She wasn't just stealing, Mary whispered. She was laundering. Our attorney took the box to the district attorney's office that afternoon. 2 days later, the grand jury subpoenaed HOA's personal bank records, her cousin's tax filings, property records for her new vacation home. 2 counties over. HOA's countersuit. Dismissed with prejudice. This is no longer a civil matter, the DA announced at a follow-up HOA meeting, packed with residents and reporters. This is criminal fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering. The room went silent. Even the loyalists in the front row couldn't meet each other's eyes. Cornered, HOA did what manipulators always do. She betrayed her own. Her cousin, the treasurer, was arrested first, charges conspiracy to commit fraud and falsification of records. When the deputies took him out in handcuffs, HOA released a statement. I was deceived by those I trusted. Any irregularities were due to their misconduct. Not mine. Bill nearly spat out his coffee. Classic snake move, he said, but it didn't work because the cousin facing 25 years in prison flipped. He turned over email chains showing HOA directing him to falsify budget reports. Voice memos where she outlined plans to increase fines on elderly residents least likely to resist. A draft memo titled Escalation Strategy, Target Weak Links. She called us weak links, Linda said bitterly. She's about to learn we're not. The day HOA was arrested, the whole neighborhood gathered at the community center. Not to throw a party, to vote. Motion, dissolve the Maple Creek Villas. HOA. The vote, yes. 28 no. 12 abstain, 5 the loyalists. They either didn't show up or had already put their houses up for sale. A local news van filmed the entire meeting. As the reporter spoke into the camera, deputies led HOA out of her house, wrist-cuffed, wearing her signature red heels, head bowed. The reporter's closing line. Sometimes the greatest threats to a community come from those who claim to protect it. The following weeks were surreal. Without the HOA breathing down our necks, neighbors started talking again. Mrs. Garcia organized a potluck. Mary's husband, an amateur carpenter, volunteered to fix the community benches HOA had neglected for years. Bill donated funds to repair the playground equipment HOA had budgeted for, but never touched. And the best part, remember Sarah, the single mom? We raised enough through a community fundraiser to replace her beagle's veterinary bills and her slashed tires. She cried when we handed her the check. This is what a real neighborhood looks like, she whispered. 3 months later in court, HOA pled no contest to fraud, embezzlement, harassment, conspiracy. She was sentenced to 10 years probation. Full restitution of stolen funds, community service. Ironically, at a senior center, a permanent ban from serving on any HOA or community board in the state. The judge's final remark, your ambition poisoned a community. May you spend the next decade making amends. Maple Creek Villas is no longer an HOA-governed community. Instead, we formed a neighborhood advisory committee, strictly voluntary. No fines, no forced compliance. Just neighbors, helping neighbors, last month. As I sat at a block party watching Linda's grandkids ride their bikes freely down the street, I felt something we hadn't had in years, peace and a little justice. Justice might come late, Bill said, clinking his lemonade to mine. But it comes. If you thought this was just wait until you hear what happened when HOA tried to sell her vacation home, let's just say karma wasn't done with her. Yet, you'd think after being arrested, sentenced, and banned from community leadership forever, HOA would disappear. Start over. Lay low, count her blessings. But some people, they can't help themselves. Greed doesn't retire about 6 months after the trial. We thought the HOA chapter of our lives was closed. Maple Creek Villas was thriving without the HOA New Gardens restored playground. Even Mrs. Garcia's famous barbecue nights had become a neighborhood tradition. Then Bill came knocking again. She's at it again, he said. Ho's trying to sell her vacation home 2 counties over. She listed it as pristine property, fully updated, no liens. Mary raised an eyebrow. No liens. That can't be right. According to the court order, HOA's assets, including the vacation home, were subject to a lien until full restitution was paid. She owed nearly $97,000. She hadn't paid a dime, but there she was advertising the house online, even offering to waive inspection fees for cash buyers. Mary's husband, who'd helped fix the playground, was a retired private investigator. He pulled up public records. Turns out HOA had filed a quitclaim deed transfer trying to move the vacation home into her boyfriend's name to dodge the restitution lien. Her boyfriend, the same paralegal who'd pretended to be an attorney at our disastrous HOA meeting, they thought they could outsmart the courts. She really doesn't learn, Bill muttered. We gathered the documents and handed them to the district attorney's office. It took less than a week. The DA froze the vacation home sale and filed new charges. Fraudulent conveyance, attempted asset concealment, contempt of court. HOA and her boyfriend were slapped with subpoenas. The property seized by the state restitution funds collected $85,000. That's nearly everything she owed, Linda said with a satisfied nod, and she thought she could cheat the system again. The local news, of course, couldn't resist the story. Former HOA president who stole thousands, attempts new fraud. The headlines blared, reporters aired footage of HOA's vacation home being seized. Neighbors from her other community, the one where the vacation home was, were furious. Apparently, she tried to start a new voluntary neighborhood council and had already collected over $5,000 from unsuspecting residents. She was running the same scam again, Mary said. Different town, same playbook. But this time the community was warned early. Thanks to our court case being a matter of public record, other victims had connected the dots. HOA was done, really done, at the contempt hearing. HOA didn't wear her power suit or red heels. She wore court-mandated gray. Her once proud posture was gone. So was the boyfriend who had flipped on her faster than her cousin had. She directed all asset transfers. He testified. I was just following orders. The judge wasn't impressed. Miss Tron, he said sternly, you have shown a blatant disregard for the law, your community, and the very concept of accountability. He added 12 more months to her probation and ordered immediate garnishment of her remaining income. Should further fraud be discovered, the judge warned, you will serve the full prison term originally suspended. HOA didn't speak. She couldn't. Her attorney had advised her to keep silent. Back at Maple Creek Villas, life had truly moved on. The neighborhood advisory committee flourished. Linda's grandkids could now sell lemonade on the sidewalk without fear of a $50 unauthorized sales fine. Mary's roses had fully grown back. Even the once divided younger families now gathered for community events. And Mrs. Garcia, she was elected chair of the advisory committee, unopposed. Not bad for a weak link, huh? she joked at the victory barbecue. We all laughed, even Bill. The grumpiest of us all cracked a rare smile. We'd started this battle thinking it was just about fines and petty HOA rules, but it was never just about money. It was about control, about standing up when someone tries to bully an entire community into silence, about proving that no matter how slick or young or smart a con artist thinks they will always leave a trail. And when people stand together, even the biggest scams collapse. Justice might take time, Mary said, lifting her glass, but it always catches up. We all raised a toast to peace, to perseverance, and to never underestimating a group of determined neighbors. If you thought this was satisfying, just wait until you hear what happened when HOA tried one last scheme while on probation. Trust me, you won't want to miss the final chapter. They say some people never learn. HOA was one of them. Even after the grand jury, the liens, the probation, and the public humiliation, she tried one last time. 6 months into her probation, HOA quietly moved to another suburban community 3 towns over. This time, she didn't run for HOA president. She was smarter now. She simply volunteered to help with administrative tasks, filing, drafting newsletters, managing the community Facebook page. It started innocently enough until residents noticed mysterious donation requests appearing on the page. Small amounts, $20 here, $50 there for beautification projects. Sound familiar? It would have worked too, except one of the new community members was a retired fraud investigator. Guess what he found? HOA had created a Venmo account disguised as the neighborhood's community improvement fund. The money went straight into her personal bank account again, but this time she didn't get far. The fraud investigator called the DA from our county, the same DA who prosecuted HOA the first time. Within days, the state probation office was notified. HOA's probation was revoked, her suspended sentence activated. She was arrested on the spot. No fanfare, no press conference, just cold, simple justice. Repeat offenders rarely get third chances. The judge said at the sentencing, HOA was sentenced to 5 years in state prison, no probation, no fines, no plea deals. Just bars. When word reached our neighborhood, no one cheered. We didn't need to. Our victory had come long ago, not just when HOA was first arrested, but when we rebuilt our community. The gardens, the restored benches, the safe HOA-free playground, neighbors who now looked out for each other. Linda still made her famous peach cobbler. Bill still grumbled about the young kids playing football on the lawn, but smiled as he did. Mrs. Garcia retired from the advisory committee, but stayed active as our honorary watchdog. And me, I kept the 3 binders, the evidence that started it all. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. A reminder that when good people stand together, no scam, no bully, no manipulator can defeat them. In the end, this wasn't just a story about HOA abuse. It was about the importance of community unity, the danger of unchecked power, and how standing up, even when it's hard, even when you feel alone, can change everything. Evil triumphs when good people do nothing. Mrs. Garcia had once said, but in Maple Creek Villas, we did something and we won. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, or maybe a neighbor who thought they could control the whole street? Share your story in the comments below. Let's shine a light on these abuses, because the more we speak up, the less power bullies like HOA will ever have again. And if you enjoyed this saga, hit the like button so I know to bring you more true community stories. Don't forget to subscribe for the next big expose. You won't believe what's coming next. Your voice matters. Let's keep the conversation going.